let's try something a little bit different here. Now, as I've been working on a lot of videos, whether it be reviews, top 10s, history videos, and all that stuff, on my spare time, I have been checking out some different content, just for my own leisure and stuff like that. But recently, I have experienced two different sets of cartoons that I can't help but find to be very fascinating. And even though the animation community or the Disney community isn't necessarily talking about it to the point of making it trending and have a lot of people on social media have discussions about them, I can't help but feel like these two sets of cartoons are just very fascinating, and I just feel like I have a lot of opinions and, just need a moment to really talk about these cartoons in particular. And hopefully I could go and find more people to go and have more discussions about them, because they really are fascinating, and they really are worth looking into, especially when they are very unique projects from two of Disney's biggest animation studios, and that they both offer something that we wouldn't expect from them, or at least we wouldn't expect from them doing so recently. And that is Walt Disney Animation Studios' How to Stay at Home and Pixar's Dayz. And the reason why I wanted to talk about both of them together is because they both do have some similarities. The fact that they are both on Disney Plus, and the fact that they are both technically two sets of cartoons, and also that they both star two beloved Disney dogs, where one of them stars Goofy and the other one stars Doug from Up. So, with that said, I might as well go and start things off with the shorter one of the bunch, which is How to Stay at Home, starring Goofy. Now, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but this is actually the first time in an entire decade that Walt Disney Animation Studios has actually produced a fully hand-drawn animated project. And this is actually a project that came to us none other by animation legend Eric Goldberg. And even the animation team is actually relatively small, but they do have a bunch of recognizable animators and Disney veterans, such as, of course, Eric Goldberg being the main director and the writer of the entire project, as well as, along with him, they got Randy Haycock, Mark Henn, as well as Loreline Weatherly and Rachel Bibb working on the cleanup and the backgrounds. Technically, there is a little bit of a narrative that is going on with each of them, and that is related to the pandemic. And these are technically a group of 3 cartoons where we see Goofy doing regular tasks that we would each experience during the pandemic, rather it be about how to wear a mask or cooking at home, like do your own cooking, in which Eric Goldberg even stated that he was actually inspired by that little trend that happened when everyone was making their own sourdough bread. And there was also binge watching, where, considering that we have a lot more time than we would expect and that we ended up being stuck at home, binge watching ended up becoming something that a lot more people have done in order to catch up on their favorite episodes. And one thing I can say about these cartoons is that this is a very cute little throwback to those classic Goofy cartoons. Of course, considering that the animation is led and they are mainly created by some major legends, including Eric Goldberg, Randy Haycock, and Mark Henn. The animation is absolutely on point. It's really admirable. And of course, they do capture the fun of the Goofy cartoons to make them more physical, to make them, well, in lack of a better term, make them more goofy, and really go all out on the the physical comedy, especially a great example of that would be How to Wear a Mask, which that one was actually animated by Eric Goldberg. And that is one thing I almost forgot to mention, is the fact that each of these cartoons are actually animated by that one animator, with either Laureline or Rachel helping them out for either the backgrounds or the cleanup work, which, by the way, also, it's only Laureline that did do the backgrounds on top of the cleanup work, where Rachel Bibb did a lot more of the cleanup. But anyways, back to what I was talking about. Yes, Eric Goldberg was in charge of animating the Mask episode, Randy Haycock did the cooking episode, and Mark Henn did the binge-watching episode. And when it comes to the physical comedy, it really is exemplified by the Mask episode by Eric Goldberg, where we see Goofy having a lot of difficulty trying to go and wear a mask. And of course, with these cartoons, considering that they are technically the how-to type of cartoons that Goofy is very well known for throughout the decades, of course they serve as like little instructional videos of how to do these simple tasks, and explaining the benefits of doing these tasks, despite the fact that what we see on screen is just Goofy really messing things up. But still, in the end, he does manage to work things out in his own unique way. It's like, well, I guess it works, you know, kind of like that kind of attitude. And yes, the animation is on point. The comedy, I will say, it's not fantastic, but they are definitely cute. You know, it's more chuckle-worthy than it really is laugh out loud. But I will say that if I do have a favorite among the three, it would easily be the binge-watching episode. That one, I feel like it is the funniest, and the comedy really is on point. And that is especially thanks to the animation by Mark Henn and the cleanup work by Rachel Bibb, where in that one, we just see Goofy just walking all around his house, doing all these different tasks, while we see his head is perfectly stationary to just watching the TV, to do binge watching all day. And it really is funny the different ways that, like, he would just walk around and do all his things, like, you know, like lighting up the fireplace, or getting pizza, or like being ready to go to bed on his couch. Honestly, that's where the comedy, not only is it on point, but I feel like it is the best homage to the classic cartoons, not just of Goofy, but also there is a bit of that hint of Tex Avery as well, where we see that over-the-top nature that we would find in these cartoons. And it's through these like casually over-the-top moments that really do sell the comedy. So the binge-watching episode, yes, that one I would have to say is my favorite among the three. However, there is one criticism that I do have with all these cartoons. This is honestly a very common problem with each of the three, that I really do feel like it kind of takes it away from actually being like a great set of cartoons and really making them an absolute must-watch on Disney+. And my biggest problem with them is that the cartoons are 4.5 minutes long without the credits. In total. Yeah, that's basically my biggest issue with How to Stay at Home. It's the fact that they are ridiculously short. So short, in fact, that technically, if you go on Disney Plus and you go and check out How to Stay at Home, Disney Plus also has the option where you can actually watch all the cartoons together. And again, without the credits, it really is just 4.5 minutes long, and each of the cartoons are less than 90 seconds long. Now, technically, I do get it. The team didn't necessarily have that much time to go on work on these cartoons, and also, it literally is just one animator working on the cartoons, and maybe one or two cleanup artists to go and finalize the look on them. Like, I get it. They're like a little too small to make something that is completely elaborate. But the problem with their length is that they don't feel like legitimate Goofy cartoons. They all feel like the start of a Goofy cartoon. Where, yeah, like, the comedy is not necessarily at its best. It's not necessarily the funniest Goofy cartoons that they have produced, but they feel like they would be a good start. You know, it's like a little bit of an appetizer, or not even an appetizer, like a bit of the hors d'oeuvre of what could be to come with the rest of the cartoons. I mean, generally, with the Goofy cartoons back in like the golden days, or like in the previous Goofy cartoons, even back as recently as How to Hook Up Your Home Theater, those ones, they have an average length of around like 7 to 8 minutes each, give or take. But these ones, considering it's just 90 seconds long, they feel like they feel like they're just the start of something. And then immediately afterwards, as soon as you think the cartoon is really about to start, and then like now you feel like, okay, the good part is finally gonna happen, that's when it suddenly ends. Like, it's just setting up like just this one elaborate joke, and then suddenly it's over. Now, I know generally the criticism, or like saying that, oh, my only problem with it is that there's not enough of it. Like, usually that would be used as a compliment to say that you love everything about it and you only wish you had more of that. But for me, I feel like in this case, it really makes these cartoons a lot more of a disappointment, because there really is not enough. Like I said, I couldn't even say that this is more of an appetizer to a cartoon. It's more like an hors d'oeuvre, because you barely even got a whole meal with what you have with these cartoons, which, honestly, at this point, if you're only going to deliver just 90 seconds with something that feels like has so much promise, and something that for many animation fans is something that they would dream to actually happen, something that is written and directed by Eric Goldberg, it's Goofy cartoons, and not to mention the comeback of hand-drawn animation from Walt Disney Animation Studios, from some of the animation masters. Like, you'd think that this would be something that would build up to be something that would be spectacular, like an animation event you don't want to miss. But the fact that they are way too short kind of makes it not really that worth it, when you're just getting so little of something that you really want to see Disney to go and fully expand upon. So overall, I really like these cartoons. I like what they have done with it. And I mean, the animation is on point. The comedy is cute. You know, they are enjoyable, but it's just so short that I can't help but feel like just a bit disappointed that there's just very little of something that feels very promising. Like, I love the idea of seeing some Goofy cartoons discussing about pandemic issues and really going in depth into some of the casual tasks that we would face during these times, including wearing a mask, or binge watching, or cooking up meals, or stuff like that. You know, these are great ideas. Like I said before, everything about them is great. It's just that we received so little of it. It only feels like it's just nothing more but an idea, and it really proves that when it comes to stuff like Goofy cartoons, they shouldn't be 90 seconds long. Like, actually go and flesh them out and try to make 7 minutes. I understand that Disney didn't necessarily give them enough of a crew, or enough of a budget, or absolutely not enough time to go and really make them full-length, legitimate Goofy cartoons. But still, though, it's just the length was really something that kind of not necessarily killed it for me, but just made me feel a little bit let down that they really did not let out the full potential of these cartoons. And it actually does say a lot that this review that I'm doing right now is even longer than the cartoons that I actually am talking about. So I understand. I know I'm presenting a lot of strong feelings about it, but it's just that I feel like this is one of those moments that it has a lot of great potential, and I would love to see them expand upon this, but it's just 90 seconds each, or not even 90 seconds each on these 3 cartoons. It really is just not enough. All right, so that's my opinions on the how to stay at home cartoons. Now let's go and actually move on to the next cartoons that we have, which is Dayz from Pixar. And this is kind of like a mini sequel to Pixar's 2009 movie Up, where in here, this is actually created by the voice of Doug and Pixar veteran Bob Peterson, where not only did he reprise his role as the beloved dog, but he is also the writer and director of the episodes, where they kind of have a little bit of a plot line where this is all set after the events of Up, where Carl and Doug decided to go and move into a brand new home. And there's nothing really spectacular about these cartoons. There's nothing like where they would go on a grand adventure on the scale of the movie. But instead, this is more like a slice of life style of cartoons. This is where we would go see Doug just play around in his new home and just interacting with Carl during his dog life times. And that alone, I feel like, is already a pretty perfect recipe. You don't have to do anything that's grand or spectacular or over the top and crazy. Like, just something that is just wholesome and simple, such as Doug just being a dog. I feel like that is just enough for something to be pretty enjoyable. And honestly, one thing I could say that it already did better than How to Stay at Home is that the length of these cartoons are actually very solid, and these actually do feel like full cartoons where they have an approximate running time of 7 to 9 minutes each, give or take, again. And that is without the credits, by the way. And simple as that, it really is just where we would see Doug on like specific little adventures, rather it be where he would be interacting with puppies, where he would go and try to find a mysterious smell that he's not familiar with, or that Doug would just freak out by hearing fireworks and all that kind of stuff. You know, just simple dog life things. And of course, I will talk about this a little bit later, but yes, Doug does go and interact with the well-known squirrel. Like, that little running gag in the movie, now it has been fully fleshed out where the squirrel does become a recurring character throughout these Dayz cartoons. And like I said before, really, this whole plot line of just Doug living his life as a dog, but he still has his talking collar, it's such a simple concept, but it really does work out. It's such a wholesome idea that it's one of those cartoons that you're not really here to see something extravagant. You don't want to see something that's like crazy or wacky. It's not for the same purposes as to why you would want to see something like How to Stay at Home. This is like one of those cartoons that you just want to kick back, you want to take it easy, and you just want to relax. It's a little bit like one of the slice of life Studio Ghibli films, you know, a little bit similar to watching something like Kiki's Delivery Service or My Neighbor Totoro or something like that. It really is meant to just see life, basically, and to see a dog's life also, which adds in a lot to the wholesomeness and does result in some very cute moments as well, especially the puppies episode. Now, I am not gonna lie, I am honestly a massive sucker for puppies, so that episode where we see Doug interacting with the puppies, yeah, the plot line may be a little bit familiar, like it feels recycled, something that you would see in plenty of other cartoons and TV shows and stuff like that. But just the execution of it all, it feels very adorable. It's so likable that, you know, it's hard to really hate that, especially when you see the puppies just go running around like crazy and Doug just having a hard time trying to discipline them all, to take care of them all. or we see Doug trying to make sure that he would go and protect his toys. Oh, and also, one thing I want to add that a part of me does wish that they could have expanded upon that more, but one thing I really did enjoy, funny enough, is actually the intro of the cartoons, because there is a little bit of a narrative that actually happens that immediately connects the events of Up and where we are right now with Doug Dayz, where we see the narrative where Carl and Doug actually ends off selling the entire blimp. They sold the Spirit of Adventure, and they would go house hunting and see which house they would want to go and buy. And there have been a few flubs, like a house full of cats, or this really cool abstract house. Oh, which, fun fact, just a little bit of a side note, I am a little bit of a sucker for abstract architecture. They really are fascinating, whether it be stuff from like Antoni Gaudi, Frank Gehry, or even L'Habitat 67 in Montreal. Those are always admirable, and they always look really cool to me. Like it's one of those like dream houses one day I wish to have, like to have something like very modern and have something pretty abstract just to live in. That would be really awesome for me. But anyways, going back to the intro of Doug Dayz, yeah, like they would try to find a house, and a lot of them are just flops until they actually found their new home. And I feel like that is actually a pretty cool narrative. And again, I wish they could have expanded upon that. I wish that could have been like its own full episode, because I feel like there would have been like a lot of fun materials that they could play with. I mean, there was already a lot that they did use for the intro, but like, it would have been really cool to see a full episode in itself that directly connects Up with Doug Dayz. So that's just something I want to mention. So yeah, it has a really fun intro and really cool to watch every time. And just going back into the squirrel aspect, I would say the squirrel is my one major criticism throughout this entire set of cartoons, mainly because of the fact that the squirrel is animated a little bit too realistically for the type of character that he wants to do. Now, one thing I will say, just like a little bit on the side note, that considering that this animation is coming from Pixar, it looks absolutely amazing. Like, the amount of detail and the amount of work that's actually been put into this, they pretty much treat this no differently than they would with Up back in 2009, or what they would do with their modern animated features. So with the animation here, of course, they do take it as seriously, and it does have that feature quality that is highly detailed and really just beautiful to watch. But when it comes to the squirrel, like, it's noticeable that they really wanted to make the squirrel more of a bit of a snarky, cynical, like a little bit of a rival slash antagonistic type of character, that he would always go and pester Doug whenever he can throughout some of these episodes. But the problem is, the squirrel is just animated too realistically, where the animators feel very limited when it comes to what they can do with his facial animations, where it feels more like a realistic squirrel just being a squirrel, more so than the type of character that they want to portray him as. Like, even though it looks like an actual squirrel no differently than what you would see in your backyard or something like that, the way that they animated the squirrel, or the way that they gave him a personality, feels more like a legitimate cartoon. And it feels kind of weird as well, because I remember having a discussion about this before, but it feels out of place for the world of Up, because the design of Up is supposed to be more abstract, where the characters are a lot more geometrical. And case in point, like, you look at a character like Carl Fredricksen, who's a lot more designed like a box if you look at his silhouette, or characters like Doug or Russell, where they're a lot more round, like an oval or an egg, like kind of that kind of round shape. But when it comes to the squirrel, like, you'd think he would, you would think the squirrel would have a bit more of a geometric shape, or they would have more of a cartoonier look to match the personality that they would present in there. But the way that they made him realistic, it kind of feels like the same issue as the 2019 Lion King movie, where they look realistic when they shouldn't be, considering that they have more human-like personalities. But again, that's just my one criticism with the cartoons, and it's pretty much a bit of a minor detail compared to everything else, to the point where, like, it would be fine. It's understandable if you would say that what I did with the whole squirrel, that's just nitpicking, because everything else is just very well executed. It's very on point, and it's very well done, where it's, like, easy to get into, and it's also something that is just fun to just sit back, relax, and just enjoy something wholesome and very sweet as well. Now, if I would go and talk about what I think are the best or my personal favorites, it's hard to say really, because each of these cartoons are actually a lot of fun to go and watch, but I would say the ones that really do stand out are actually the last two episodes. First one is called Flowers, and with Flowers, that one I would say is the one that really did the best when it comes to the animation, because that's where they have to go and take it to the next level with the animation. And I know I said before that this is the kind of cartoons that where it's a lot more wholesome. It's like sit back, relax, and just enjoy Doug being a dog and enjoying his life. But with Flowers, there's a little bit of a narrative where we see Carl and Doug just enjoying this little festival that's going on in his town, and then suddenly fireworks happen. And this is where we see the animation really kick up a notch, where Doug is just freaking out over the fireworks and just running around both at the backyard and in the house, where he's just causing pure chaos and a little bit of destruction at the same time. And then it would follow up with a complete dream sequence where we see kind of like an exaggerated world from Doug's point of view, where like it starts out as a paradise, but then it becomes a bit of a nightmare with all the flowers coming after Doug. But overall, though, it was a very fun episode to watch. Even though it does stand out from the rest, it's a lot more different in terms of tone. The animation, you could tell there's a lot more work that was put onto it, especially when creating that whole dream sequence, but definitely a lot of fun. And then there is the episode Science, which I would say has the strongest connection to the movie. And I would say maybe it's this one. Like, if there would be only one of these cartoons that would feel like a direct sequel to Up, I would say it would be this one in particular. And I feel like I went through a bit of an interesting roller coaster of emotions when watching this episode in particular. But going back into the Up aspect, not only is Russell back, this is the only episode of Dayz where Russell does come back, but also they really went into the technology of Doug's collar, you know, the collar that does make the dogs talk. But this time around, Russell tweaked it a little bit so that now other animals who wear this, they can actually go and talk as well. Now, admittedly, at first, I wasn't really as on board with it. I did feel a little bit annoyed by what they were presenting, especially when it's not just Doug that would be constantly talking, but also the squirrel was given a collar, and also this bird was also given a collar as well, and they would fight for this peanut butter and jelly sandwich that Russell technically gave to Doug. But then, suddenly, like, as they were fighting, right in the middle of it all, that's when suddenly the tone just suddenly shifts. And immediately, it went from what I felt like is the weakest episode of the bunch to possibly the best episode of the bunch. Now, I won't be spoiling anything specific about what happens, but I'm just going to say, once the animals stop fighting, that's when the heart really does let out. Not just the heart of the episode, but I feel like both the heart of the series and the heart of the characters, to show a true sentimental side that we haven't even seen in the movie, actually. Or, like, we would only have a taste in the movie, but now has been fully expanded in that little moment. And just when you think that the episode would be done and it would be like, it would just go and cap off on that really sweet and heartfelt tone, they actually found a way to make it even bigger, like to make it even more heartfelt and very touching, to the point that, like, I wouldn't be surprised if someone would watch it and they would end up shedding a tear. And this all, like, the ending of the science episode also highlights something that I have yet to really touch upon, but it kind of really gives me a new perspective. And I'll just say right now, and I'll probably repeat this a little later, but a massive newfound appreciation for these Dayz cartoons, because at the end, it truly does highlight the relationship between Doug and Carl. Now, one thing I almost forgot to mention is that not only did Bob Peterson come back to voice as Doug, but also Ed Asner came back to reprise his role as Carl Fredricksen. And he's pretty much the same as he was back in the 2009 film, and it definitely feels like such a joy to hear him once again. And considering that he did pass away literally just a few days before the actual release of the cartoons. Now, keep in mind, this is not a deliberate thing that Disney has done where they put out the Dayz cartoons right after Ed Asner passed away. It just so happened that it felt like very bad timing where he died just before seeing the release of these cartoons. But it gave me a lot more of an appreciation for these cartoons, where it gave us an opportunity that we never thought we would normally have if it weren't for stuff like Disney Plus, where we actually would get to hear Ed Asner play as what is possibly his most beloved cartoon role. Now, that alone, I feel very thankful for these Dayz cartoons, but also at the same time, with these Dayz cartoons, we also get to see a bit of a new side of Carl Fredricksen. Now, usually in the movie, we would see Carl as a bit of this grumpy old man, but we do understand his intentions. Like, we do understand that he has a very big heart, especially with his motivation to go to Paradise Falls, just so he can make the dream of his deceased wife come true. Like, yeah, we know we would have that aspect. Like, we already know that of Carl, but in the Dayz cartoons, we see him more with a bit of a sweet side, actually. Like, yeah, there is that grumpy old man side that we know from Carl Fredricksen, but he is a lot more sweet and he is a lot more caring. And going back into the end of the science episode, that's where we really see the true relationship of Carl and Doug really be defined. Like, this is the moment where we see, like, what the relationship is after the events of Up. Like, what does Doug mean to Carl Fredricksen? And they really go into the whole theme of what it means to be a pet, or what is a pet from the perspective of technically the pets themselves. And the way that they capped it off, the way that they ended that episode with Carl and Doug, like, defining what it means to be a pet, it was just so heartfelt. And I will say, like, maybe if you don't count any of the animated shorts Pixar has done, it's honestly the most wholesome thing that Pixar has ever done. Like, debatably even more so than what they did with within their movies. It really is that touching. And overall, when it comes to the Dayz, I really do feel like they are absolutely worth watching. Like, these are great additions to Disney Plus, and I feel like they are wonderful sets of cartoons that do continue the events of Up. Like, this is definitely a must watch for people who are fans of the movie, and especially for people who just enjoy dogs in general. If you want something wholesome, if you just want something to just unwind, relax, and just have fun watching, like, a dog being a dog, like, if you're the kind of person who would watch those cute animal videos on YouTube, like as a bit of a stress reliever or something like that, then I highly recommend that you go and watch Dayz. They really are worth it. And yeah, those are my opinions on both How to Stay at Home and Dayz. Now, I know that technically this is not as elaborate as my scripted reviews, but I still hope that you guys enjoyed it the same and that this is still as fun and insightful to watch. This is just something that I figured, why not I just go and do it so I could just speak out my mind and, just create something a little fun on it, just like as an extra little thing for you guys. And hopefully this could help, like, maybe encourage you to go and not only watch these cartoons, but like to go and actually have more discussions about them. Because again, I really do feel like even though these are like just two simple cartoons that you would find on Disney Plus, they are definitely worth talking about. So with all that said and done, I would like to say thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, see you later, dudes!